In my 20 plus years of watching this sport, I've been witness to many upset results, comebacks, but there's one result in particular, one moment in this sport that has stood out beyond all others and will forever be imprinted into my mind as something that was totally unexpected and simply staggering. And before I tell you what the biggest upset in the history of this sport, not just in my lifetime, but I think looking back and doing some research, the biggest upset in the history of this sport, before I tell you what I think that is, let me just say that there's a difference between an upset and a comeback. A comeback is typically a one off result where a team finds themselves under the disadvantage of a certain margin of a goal deficit that they have to make up. Uh, Barcelona, PSG in the second leg of this season's Champions League quarterfinal is one example. Oh, excuse me, round of 16. But that is not really considered an upset because you expect teams like Barcelona to beat a side like Paris Saint Germain. Same as in the Euros. I remember in Euro 2008, Turkey came from behind to beat the Czech Republic in the group stage 3-2 after being down 2-0. Again, great comeback, but the Czech Republic is not that much better of a side than Turkey. They're pretty much almost the same. But I'm talking about completely shocking results that come out of nowhere. And the one that I have in mind that I want to mention, and you're welcome to disagree with, is not a one off result. It is a championship. For me, the biggest upset in the history of the sport got to go back to Euro 2004 with Greece. Greece entered Euro 2004, the 15th ranked side out of a 16 team format. The only other side that entered the tournament that year in Portugal was Latvia. Greece was paired into a group with the host nation Portugal, Spain, and Russia. Pretty difficult group for the Greeks, who had just been returning to their first ever international tournament in 10 years. They played the host nation in the opening match. Now keep in mind, this Portuguese side was part of a golden generation that contained Rui Costa and had just recently introduced the young Cristiano Ronaldo into its side. I believe this was the same team that was coached by Felipe Scolari, the Brazilian manager who had won the World Cup with Brazil just a couple of years earlier. Somehow beat the host nation in the opening match with a sucker punch of a goal. Got at least one more point in the remaining two matches in the group to narrowly advance in second behind the host nation. And then from the quarters onwards to the final, played an extremely boring, an extremely dry, an extremely dross style of football. Ultra defensive, what one would call anti football. Securing 3 consecutive clean sheets en route to the final, where they played the host nation, the overwhelming favorite, again, and beat them again. This was a Greece team that was not full of superstars, that was one of the weakest teams entering that tournament, that were not favored to even advance from that group, that were not a big name in football, that were plagued by an aging squad entering that tournament with one of the oldest teams on average players. A team whose none of their players played for any of the big clubs in Europe. Became European champions. Still to this day, the biggest shock result in international football history, and I would argue the biggest result in football ever, because this was not a one-off game upset. This was a team that had no business winning this tournament, becoming the champions of Europe. And it's a result that will likely never happen again. This is a side that was coached by German manager Otto Rehhagel, consisting of a group of second-string players, all of whom, like I said, played an ultra-defensive style of football that worked. They beat the defending champions France in the quarterfinals. They beat one of the dark horses of that tournament, and later a dark horse of the 2006 World Cup, Czech Republic, who's going through a golden generation of their own in that tournament. And then they beat the host nation again, the overwhelming favorite, in the final. For me, there hasn't been any international football tournament since 2004 where a totally unexpected side won. Italy winning in 2006 World Cup was not unexpected. It wasn't a shock. Spain winning in 2008 the European Championship, the World Cup in 2010, the European Championship 2012. People saw that coming. Germany winning 2014. Portugal winning 2016. Not many people picked Portugal to win 2016. But it wasn't as if Turkey had went on a run and won the final. So, of the last 7 or 8 international tournaments, there has never even come close a shock result like Greece in 2004. And honestly, I cannot see anything like that happening anytime soon. Plus, I don't like to brag very much, but I was one of the very few people who picked Portugal to reach the final in 2016. A lot of people thought they weren't even going to get past the round of 16 of the quarterfinals. But anyway, that's my opinion on what is the biggest upset in the history of football. I know I'm a young guy. I haven't been around since the sport has existed, but through a lot of research and plus my own personal experience and what I witnessed, I do believe Greece in 2004 will go down as the biggest upset in the entirety of this sport. So leave a comment below, like, subscribe. Remember, I make a very clear difference between an upset and a comeback. So a result like Liverpool coming back in the 2005 Champions League final against AC Milan, but many people dubbed the Miracle of Istanbul. That's not an upset, that's a comeback. And that's a one-off, one-game result. Whereas my pick for the greatest upset of all time was a minnow winning a freaking tournament. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think there are any other upsets that I'm missing, or do you think that there's another one that's greater than Greece's triumph in 2004? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Like, subscribe, give me some